Welcome back. It's time for Press Review. We take a look at what's making headlines across board and what has been prioritized by the Kenyan press. And joining me for this discussion is Mark Bitachi, a communication consultant, as well as Philip Magal, who is a lawyer and lecturer. Now, let's take a look at the papers. Obviously, the biggest story this morning has to do with that development with the murder of Kenei, who was tagged to Ruto's, Deputy President Ruto's office. And there has been development. We'll be analyzing that later on in our next segment. But for now, let's take a look at the other stories that are making headlines. And let's start off with a story that is relating to the NYS scandal. We're told this morning on the various papers, I'll just sample the Business Daily's headline, Equity top lists of NYS fraud fine. Now, Equity Bank paid the biggest fine to Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haj, to avoid being prosecuted for failing to report suspicious transactions linked with the theft of funds at the National Youth Service. Now, the Equity Bank is said to have paid 120 million shillings. Standard Chartered is there, Diamond Trust, KCB Group, and Cooperative Bank, and of course they are paying millions, from 100 down to 60 million shillings. What do you make of this one?
Well, the thing is, this is one of those things that you are torn. And the reason I'm torn is because, number one, the fact that they're admitting guilt is a first in this country.
Yes.
Because in the past, what has really happened is a lot of people have gotten away scot-free.
Yeah.
No bill, no nothing. So the fact that they're admitting guilt and saying, listen, we actually made a mistake, we actually aided corruption, is a step in the right direction.
Sure.
Also, it is indicative that now the DPP has people who have evidence against the people who are accused, because you can know for sure that if there was money sent, there's someone who sent, and if there's money that was received, there's someone who received. So that's the side that is the good side of this story. What is also the good side of this story is the fact that we are getting back the proceeds of corruption, which is an important thing. You understand?
Yeah.
That our money was stolen and we're getting a bit of it back. But the other thing is the truth of the matter is that 300 million, 60 million is a drop in the ocean in as far as these banks are concerned. Let's be very clear. Because these banks post 2-3 billion shillings in profit. So you can imagine for them to sacrifice 100 million, it is nothing. In fact, just about 10,000 Kenyans need to go to the ATM and they'll make that money.
And there's no guarantee that it's going back to the intended purpose of the monies that was stolen.
No, it can't, because that's not how it works.
It works, exactly.
But so there's that good side, but the downside is that they're not paying enough. But let's look also at the United States. When Barack Obama became president, when there was a recession in 2008, the complaint from the American people was much like the complaint today.
Right.
And you see, in business, there is such a thing as too big to fail. So, for example, if we charged these banks, let's say 3 billion, right, and we stifled their operations, how many more Kenyans would suffer? How many more Kenyans would be jobless? If the bank falls, you know, and people who have their money still stuck in what used to be a Chase Bank will tell you that you don't want a bank to fall. So there's a lot of considerations to be done, but there are wins in it, in terms of recovery of assets, in terms of getting witnesses, and in terms of getting people who actually admit that we did wrong.
Absolutely. Welcome to the show, David Osiani, a regular on our Friday panel. And of course, we're talking about this story whereby banks have been forced to pay for their involvement, or rather lack of raising alarm over these monies that were going through their financial institutions. Now, Magal, as a lawyer, what do you make of this argument? Is it fair, and is this the way to go as far as some of these cases are concerned?
To me, this is a great step forward. We have a wonderful piece of legislation, that is Anti-Money Laundering and Assets Recovery Act, which should enable the DPP as well as the government in general to stifle money laundering and corruption.
Right.
By penalizing the bank this heavily, it means that going forward they'll be very keen as to who opens accounts with them and how those accounts are run. And believe me, whoever started money laundering, the main channel through which money is cleaned is through our banks.
Yes,
if we close that avenue, believe me, like we saw what happened with the demonetization of 1,000 shillings, people will be forced to keep their money in the house, and that attracts a lot of risks, and basically it will incentivize corruption and other forms of illicit financial flow.
Yes.
Secondly, assets recovery. Let me make a comment on that. The other day we saw somebody claiming that the rest of us are chokoras because we don't speak German.
Yeah.
And I was happy.
Why?
For once I shed tears of joy. You know, it has to get to that. Where corruption doesn't pay. Where whatever it is that you've stolen and you've kept in a bank can be accessed by the bank, by the government, and frozen. We should see that more frequently. We should see people crying outside our courts that they cannot access their illicit finances. So basically, I would like to commend the Office of the DPP. I would like to commend the government for taking bold steps. You know, these are baby steps, but all the same compared to where we were before, more so under the current CS environment, that is Tobacco, and where we are today. Right. I can say that is a major step in the positive direction.
Right. David Osiani, banks paying for that, for their involvement. What do you make of this?
I think it's a good thing. And the question is, how much did they pay?
Yeah,
had earlier been alluded. Did they pay enough not to do the mistake again? The answer is no.
Really?
Should we make them pay enough not to make the mistake again? Maybe you need to triple or quadruple what they paid. But a step in the right direction. It has to be known and it has to seem as though whenever you do some of these things or attempt to clean or launder the money launderers, there is a price for it. For far too long, our banks, which should be the avenues of flagging off some of these bad manners, have been co-conspirators in the whole money laundering thing. So it's a good thing that they have paid back or paid the price for being co-conspirators in all this. Right. But I had hoped that the pay would be a bit higher.
Steeper. But then we run the risk of affecting the common mwananchi because we all depend on these banks.
No. What is 100 million for KCB? Do you know the portfolio of KCB? 100 million is not even the salary of the CEO for a year. The CEO of KCB takes home a salary of 12 million every month. So what is 100 million? Yeah, so I think the price should have been steeper, but I guess it was negotiated. Goodwill, which they have demonstrated, and so one good step in the right direction.
Now, I would like to call attention to how it was phrased. So, on the headline today is how bank CEO bought freedom in NYS scandal, alluding to the fact that they should have paid, and this is just a cop-out for them. Do you agree with how they've phrased it?
Well, you see, the title is a bit misleading. Because the question has to be asked, who was culpable? Was the CEO the one who was culpable? Was it an officer who did alert the CEO who was culpable? So the whole mix, if we were to do a prosecution within the banking sector, who would be culpable? And that takes time. So to say the CEOs bought freedom is not necessarily accurate. The banks bought freedom because we know the institution of the bank is guilty. That we can agree. But to say that the CEO bought freedom, then the payment should have been in lieu of the CEO and not in lieu of the bank. Because it's not the CEO who was charged. It is the institution KCB, the institution Equity, the institution that was charged. So the question you've got to ask is, who would have been culpable. And you'd have found, if you look at the cases in the United States, and I'll go back to the 2008 crisis, there are a number of executives that were jailed. But sometimes it was not the CEO, sometimes it was a CFO, sometimes it was whoever. So that's a bit misleading.
Right.
But have they bought freedom? That is a statement of fact. Because the agreement, that one of the things that the DPP has to employ, and I commend them for employing this, is getting the cases out of the court system and getting justice for the Kenyan people quickly. Make no mistake that in the war against corruption, just like in any war, there's a soldier with a bullet, there's another one with a tank, and there's another one with a jet, and there's another one with a nuclear weapon. We need to go at the war against corruption that way.
Right.
We need to get as many people confessing and saying, you know what, I do not want to go to jail. Please, can I return the assets? And then can I get either a shortened sentence and whatever? We need to go that direction. We need to go the asset recovery direction. You know, when you see Ngirita calling you German-speaking people chokora, ich spreche kleine Deutsch, so I'm not chokora. I am joking. I'm joking. No, but the point is, when you see that statement, that shows you that the fight against corruption is working. Because if we're going to just say that the fight against corruption is going to only be a judicial process, then we will not win.
No.
We need to get as many people admitting their crimes and being dealt with and turning to state witnesses as much as possible.
Now, Mr. Magal, when we talk about asset recovery, I would love to see the people who are mentioned in this scandal being the ones targeted as far as asset recovery is concerned. Do you think that is a reality in as far as this scandal is concerned?
The banks, no. You know, we have to consider the nature of the crimes committed by the bank. Number one, I think one of their crimes was failing to report.
But there are those who were mentioned, you know, the individuals who are said to have been carrying around bags, huge bags. Can't they be targeted as far as asset recovery?
As far as asset recovery is concerned, you know, any property that is considered to have been ill-gotten is subject to being frozen and investigated. Later on, if it is found to have been illicitly acquired, then it's taken over by the government. Otherwise, it's returned to an individual. And that is what we see in all corruption cases. From my experience, the first step the DCI takes, or the DPP takes, is to request for the freezing of those accounts. Once they have been frozen, it means the owner then cannot access them until the case is concluded. But of course, we've seen of late there have been a few jokes here and there where people are allowed to access their accounts, either because they are supporting BBI or not. But that is subject to debate. On the issue of plea bargaining, you know, if properly used, if put to good effect, it will have wonderful results. Number one being that it will save us prosecutorial resources and time, and we will have a higher rate of conviction than if we were to let these people fight it out in a court of law. Of course, we know the challenges the DPP faces. First, we have poor investigation. Secondly, we have the high evidentiary threshold which he has to meet. He has to meet to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, in which case sometimes it really is a tricky affair, and as I think the DPP has learned over the last 1 year. Proving a criminal case is not as easy as people think. So therefore, where we have plea bargains, I think if they are not being abused, if they are being used objectively, then that is the way to go in our prosecutorial activities.
And Mr. Osiani, when they say they bought their way out of it, do you agree with the assertion that's being made?
I do not think so, but I find it a bit weird how the disgorgement rate for these monies was calculated. Because I see here DTB was fined 34.5% of money it received, while Equity was fined only 10.1%. What was the rationale of working out the disgorgement rates? I think we should have had a statistic because KCB has been slapped with a 23% of the money it received. There should have been a basis explaining why If DTB was the most culpable, tell us that this is this because their systems were all too porous.
Okay.
The mismanagement was this, and that's not enough. You then need to explain to Kenyans, what have they done now to stifle some of these movements of illicit monies? What processes have been put in place today to ensure that there is no repeat of such tomorrow? That clarity is not coming out it's not explained.
We are just assuming that the pinch will make them behave.
Yeah, we are assuming that the pinch will make them behave better.
Yeah.
But you know, some of these banks, especially private banks like DTB, the owners own other multi-billion businesses, like Furniture Palace and stuff like that.
Right.
So that is just one of the channels of money. You need to tell us that, having done that, DCI should have explained, or DPP, and stated, we have recommended these rafts of changes and reforms in this sector. Of course, I know there's been heavy reforms in the banking sector after the NYS scandal. Movement of money is not as easy as it was. You need to explain a bit more, even when you receive legit money that's your own. Those of us who are in business know that you have to prove by giving an invoice that explains why you have been paid before you access your own money.
Right.
And so that's fine. But there is no guarantee, because that may be a case of one bank. You know, maybe Stanchart says, we are a big boy, we are an international brand, we cannot afford to be mentioned in such light, and so we have fastened the seatbelt. There needs to be a better explanation. And so whether or not they bribe their way, not the CEOs. I think put the blame where it should sit. Probably say the banks, because now when you say the CEOs, you're individualizing this whole thing.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things, and just to say, you know, these banks are not being accused of using a loophole in the law. They're being accused of flaunting the law. And so in the war against corruption, we must be very clear. There are many battlefronts. There's the banking sector. There's the IFMI system. There's changes within the civil service itself. And one of the things that I feel sorry for the DPP is he's looked at as if he can solve all the problems of corruption. And I can tell you the truth, just getting to the point where you've got a case that is beyond reasonable doubt is a Herculean task. It is Herculean. And then on top of that, to deal with the judiciary of Kenya as it is set up is a Herculean task. So one of the things that we must encourage, and this the Kenyan people need to take home, we must encourage that the DPP must use alternative routes to achieve justice. One of those is asset recovery. Second is this delayed prosecution. The other one is plea bargaining. He's got to use all of those things. And what needs to happen is he needs to put so much pressure that now even the people who have individual cases would rather choose the route of becoming state witness. And people like Ngirita, now that she was already saying that she will say who they did it with, perhaps we should give her a chance, because you know everyone got the German joke, but outside. Perhaps we do need to give her the chance to say who's this other person. You see,
and why her assets should not
suffice to say. To have gotten to a point where we can repatriate some of these monies or get something back from these heists is a major thing. It may not have come from Ngirita herself. But it is more or less an, you know,
it's a win.
If we lost 600 million, the total amount here is about 300 million. That in itself is a major battle. In fact, as to demonstrate the importance of this, I hope that the DPP and DCI take these monies and go to Mbagathi, where the 120-bed isolation center is being opened by the president today, and say, you see this loot from NYS, we have plugged it in here for an extra 60 rooms of isolation in case of coronavirus.
Well.
When we demonstrate clearly that monies received from proceeds of corruption or repatriated from proceeds of corruption can be injected directly into projects that benefit the common man, we will have made a step far.
Well, we can only pray. Now, let's shift gears to the county news. And we're told on the Daily Nation that Igade is still deputy governor. IEBC now tells Speaker and clerk. Now, we're told Governor Sonko faces a corruption case, and that we know, and has been barred from accessing office. Now, we've seen him try to make certain moves, but of course, he has faced pushback because some of that argument, whether or not he can actually do that following his case and the terms of his bail. But then, of course, there's this new development that seems quite bizarre, because according to this story, is that this is because no official letter was sent to the IEBC to say that this guy has left office. So since then, according to the IEBC, he has been deputy governor. What say you, Mark?
Is it that convenient?
Yeah, I know.
Is it that convenient? What are the odds?
Yeah.
What are the odds? No, the truth is, that's a convenient little fact. And it's convenient because I wager that the only reason Sonko, the prison prefect, has not been impeached is because he did not have a deputy governor. Impeaching Sonko would have automatically meant within 30 days an election in Nairobi. Do we want an election in Nairobi? I bet not. The reason why I bet not is because if you look at Nairobi, you've got the Babu winners of the day. You might just get Sonko Part B. Right? That's Sonko 2.0. No, that's just the truth. Because when you look, you see, before you make a decision, you must always look at the possible outcomes. And in Nairobi, we may not have good options. Secondly, just because Sonko has been impeached does not mean he can't run again.
And be elected again.
And the funny thing with Nairobians is they can just maybe likely elect him again.
Yes.
So you do not want to rush to impeach Sonko towards an election. You can impeach Sonko towards him being replaced by a deputy governor who's competent. Just like the people of Kiambu breathed a collective sigh of relief when the father of Yao was exited and someone else came in.
Right.
But in Nairobi, my friend, an election right now, let me tell you, there's a high chance that Sonko might win again. And then what do you do?
Okay, yeah.
So the truth is, this, I think, is a convenient tidbit. And I think, personally, we should take advantage of it and go ahead and impeach the prison prefect. And let's see whether Igade can do for Nairobi what he did for Equity Bank for the last 2 years. That's my view. But I think, to be honest, though, I think it is rather convenient. It is a bit suspicious, but for me it's suspicious in a good way.
Suspicious in a good way. Philip, he has clearly put a question on Nairobians' ability to vote wisely as far as
what do you mean? There's no question. Sonko is their governor. There's no question. What do you mean suspicious?
They stand convicted.
They stand convicted.
By their own choices. What I would say is that, you know, it is so funny that we should find ourselves in such a position where we have to celebrate a clear illegality. You know, as much as you would want to say this is suspicious, as much as you want to say, you know, there are legal questions hanging over such a pronouncement. On the other hand, you know, you breathe a sigh of relief to think probably this man would do a better job than those who are in office. Tells you how badly run all our institutions are. Personally, I would like to make it clear, I'd like to make it known that I was happy when the national government took over some of the Nairobi County functions. Frankly, if you see the kind of garbage that goes in and out of Nairobi City, let's call it Nairobi City Council. It doesn't deserve the name county and all the good things that come with the new constitution. We have faces of CECs on the newspaper being public announcement that they're not supposed to be in office. You read another page and these people insist that they're in office.
Yeah.
Another one says she's actually the one dealing with the county finances. And you wonder what is going on, who's calling the shots? I mean, who is the governor? What are we doing in this county?
And so basically...
I think the national government is better placed to run this county. In fact, we need to rethink, radically rethink how this town should be run. We cannot trust our voters. They have let us down. If you look at all the Nairobi MPs, they are people of questionable characters. And even if we were to repeat our elections 100 times, like Mark says, we will still generate the same individuals. We would rather run this city as a company, have it run by a board, people specially appointed by all those with interest in the city. Let them, at the end of it all, declare profits or losses. Let us know whether they are working or not. Otherwise, if we continue doing things the same way, expecting the same different results, another 100 years and we'll still be here.
Yeah, and just for clarity's sake, let me read an excerpt from this. The development throws into disarray an application by an advisory opinion filed by Supreme Court at the Supreme Court by Ms. Elachi and the clerk, seeking clarity on what should happen in the absence of governor and deputy. And it says, on the vacancy in office of the deputy governor, the commission has not received formal communication other than information in the media. So are we saying that Igathe could literally today wake up and walk back into I mean, what is happening in this country?
Well, I don't think legally Igathe can go back.
Yeah.
Because he's on record on TV having stated he has resigned. So whether IEBC...
But that's on TV.
But whether IEBC...
What does it hold?
You see the problem we have.
Yeah.
And I really long for Igathe not to have resigned, but legally I doubt it will fly.
Yeah.
Because then how will you explain your absence from office for over a year? You abdicated duty.
Yeah.
Okay. If that lacuna in law can save Nairobi, I will be a very happy man. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
I will be a very happy man. The state of the capital city is sorry. It is unfortunate.
Yeah.
The city is sick, and there is no hospital in the city to even treat the city. Look at our roads. Everywhere you walk in Nairobi, look at how littered it is. I tell people daily, get 3 major things you want to achieve. Go for them big.
Yeah.
Sonko should have just decided, my plan is to make the city clean. My plan is to attempt to decongest the city in consultation with the national government. Now you go to France and show us bling bling and show us how you're seeing a monorail and you know how this can decongest city. And when you come back, all we know is that you're going to buy a gold chain for 4 million shillings. Is that what we want for our governor? And because I can almost bet he's watching this, he's been a disgrace to the city. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So you would wish that a more level-headed person like Igathe would take over and run the city to demonstrate that it can be done. I mean, that does not say that professionals have all done well.
No.
Some professionals have performed dismally. But I can almost guarantee you that there would be a better sense of management of city under Igathe.
But that was the selling point during the campaigns. It was supposed to be half and half, the people's, guy, and then the
technocrat. But you know,
to balance things
let technocrats, prosper.
Yeah.
Because he wants this run by the rule of the jungle, which is unfortunate. However jungle-like you are, you must give technocracy a place in the management of the affairs of a city so big as Nairobi, whose economy is believed to be supporting the backbone of this country, depending on what economic report you read, from 25 to 40% of the whole country.
Even affects the region.
So if you are going to run, the economy of Nairobi, the economy of Rwanda is the size of the economy of Westlands, not even Nairobi.
Yeah.
The economy of Nairobi is equivalent to the economy of Tanzania. That's what I'm saying. So it's like putting someone in charge of a whole country like Tanzania, and then he shows up with bling bling instead of showing up with solutions for this country. Mbagathi Hospital, you know, and that's why I actually appreciate that some of these functions have had to be reverted, whether under concession or coercion. That's not the point. Health function, transport function, planning functions, you know, and public works functions that have been reverted to the national level for management. You have a hospital like Mama Lucy or Mbagathi. I went to see my help at Mbagathi Hospital when she was receiving some attention. And you wonder what the county was doing before then. Thankfully now, you know, reverted under national government, I hope it will be managed better. I passed by there yesterday to see what is believed to be the isolation center for coronavirus, and I have to commend the Ministry of Health. For once, we have competed China in building their 8-day hospitals by doing our 120 room or 120 bed capacity isolation center, and it's by last evening was near complete. And I think I love that, and we need to appreciate that. But would Sonko have done it? That's the question.
Good question.
Is Mama Lucy Hospital in a state that we would all be proud of? Pumwani, that he wants to call Mike Sonko Pumwani Maternity, God knows what hospital. We cannot run a whole city by populist ventures and run thinking that that solves the problem of the city. The effect of that mismanagement is far felt. And so to remedy that, we have to think outside the box. If it will get to the point where we need a by-election, it would be unfortunate, but so be it. Of course, a by-election would disrupt immensely the economy at this time against the backdrop of coronavirus and things like that. But if it must get us there to save the city,
then it might happen. Now, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have our panel dissecting all the biggest stories, including coronavirus, this part with Somalia, and much, much more. This is Morning Express.